So let's go over these properties one by one and see what they actually mean. The first is the open loop voltage gain. So this is just the voltage gain. If you just take an op-amp circuit and you give some input voltage over here, then how much is this output voltage going to be? It is going to be this open loop voltage gain multiplied by the input voltage. That is all it means. Why it is called open loop? I will come to it in a little bit. So ideally this open loop voltage gain is infinite. In principle it is very large. So for example, what this means is that if you give an input of, let's say, 1 microvolt, so that's 10 to the minus 6 volts, then you will get, and let's say for a real op-amp the gain is 10 to the 5, then basically you will have an output of 0.1 volt at the end of it. Okay, input impedance is very high, output impedance is very low. So these are two properties that are that we will find quite useful. High input impedance, low output impedance. Input bias current. Now this is just the current that flows into your op-amp. So input bias current are the currents that are flowing in, and ideally that is zero. So what this means is that ideally no current flows into the op-amp. Ideally, in reality, there will be some small amount of current that goes in, but for our, when we are trying to analyze a circuit, we are going to deal with ideal op-amps, and we will say that the amount of current entering the op-amp is zero. By the way, we have also said that the input impedance is very high. Now, what does that mean? It means if you look at the voltage difference between this non-inverting terminal and this inverting terminal. So if you think, let's go back to the previous page. So the current flowing in over here is of the order of nanoamperes. This input resistance, so nanoamperes, this input resistance over here is of the order of mega ohms. That means the potential difference over here across these two is this current times this resistance. So this is of the order of millivolts. In other words, the difference between V1 and V2 is so small that ideally you can say that it's the same voltage. So we say that there is a virtual short between V1 and V2. So when you combine these two properties, this one and this one, we say V1 and V2 are virtually shorted. Why do we say virtually? Why is it not a real short? Because if it was a real short, then all the current would flow through it. But in reality, there is no current flowing in it. So it's a virtual short. You can always treat the inverting and the non-inverting terminals of your op-amp as being at practically the same voltage level. But there is no current flowing into the op-amp. So these are the properties that I wanted to talk about. No, there are a few more. Hold on. So we will now talk about the maximum peak to peak output. So here is your op-amp. Input 1, input 2, output. And over here, of course, you have your plus VCC minus VEE. Suppose we are giving plus minus 15 volts. Now, like everything else in physics, this is not a magic. This op-amp is not a magical device. We are using these electronic circuits to amplify our signals, but there's always conservation of energy to stop us. So you cannot expect that if you ask for a gain of like 100,000, you will not get a gain of 100,000 without giving it some input. So whatever output you're getting is going to be limited by how much biasing you're giving to your transistor. When you are, let's say you input a voltage of, let's say, 1 millivolt and you want to amplify it, where is that extra energy coming from? How is it being amplified? That extra voltage that you require is coming from your VCC and minus VEE. So anyway, your total peak to peak voltage cannot exceed 30 volts because plus 15 to minus 15 difference is 30 volts. So ideally, total peak to peak output voltage has to be less than 30 volts. Well, ideally it should be less than 30 volts. But because this is a real op-amp, there are always some small voltage drops inside it depending on what kind of circuitry there is. So you never get the full 30 volts. So there is a curve. It depends on the amount of load resistance that you have put. And over here, so this is called VM peak to peak. So VM peak to peak, the graph looks something like this. So your 30 volts will be somewhere over here. But ideally, depending on how much load resistance you're putting, you will get some lower value. So always remember that you are always limited by how much load resistance you're putting. You're limited by the real component inside this circuit. Okay, the next property that I would like to talk about is called the slew rate. The slew rate basically tells you what is the rate at which the voltage in your op-amp, the output voltage can change its value. So for example, suppose as a function of time, I'm plotting the output voltage. Suppose at some point you want, right now let's say the voltage is 0, and at some point it has to switch and become some high value. So ideally, for an ideal op-amp, this switch will happen instantaneously. So it's 0, then at this particular instant in time, it suddenly jumps up and becomes high. So this is for an ideal op-amp. However, for a real op-amp, this switch is not instantaneous. It takes some time. So for a real op-amp, it might go something like this. So you can see there is some rate at which this increase happens. So the slew rate is defined as the rate at which this change occurs. And for the 741, this is going to be something like 2 volts per microsecond. So you can see this is already, it's quite large. So suppose if you want to do, if you wanted to increase by 10 volts, it's just going to take 5 microseconds for this to happen. So even a real op-amp which has its own limitations has a pretty good slew rate. This is one of the reasons why we prefer to use op-amps, because the switching time between high and low states is very large. Now this also allows us to check what is the maximum signal frequency that you can use with your op-amp. See, we have said that the slew rate is 2 volts per second. So if you want it, if you have an AC signal whose frequency is very large, then you will not be giving your op-amp enough time to switch between the high and low states. So this puts a limitation on what the maximum frequency can be. So, and it's, suppose the V out is of the form Vp sine omega t, where Vp is your peak voltage. Then you can see that delta V out by delta t, which is your slew rate, is going to be Vp omega cosine omega t. Now, if you want your switching to happen fast, you want the slew rate to be greater than Vp omega, or in other words, omega has always to be less than SR over Vp. Or if you want to write it not in terms of the angular frequency but the actual frequency f, remember that omega is 2 pi f. Then the frequency has to be less than slew rate over 2 pi peak voltage. So this is known as the f max, or the maximum frequency that your op-amp can manage. Okay, good. So these conclude the discussion about the characteristic properties of an op-amp. So we looked at things like open loop voltage gain, input and output impedance, input bias current, and so on. And then we looked at what is the maximum output that you can get. You will, in an op-amp, if VCC and VEE are plus minus 15 volts, then never you will get an output which is greater than 30 volts. So always your output will be limited to that value. We have seen what the slew rate is, the rate at which your signal can switch between states. And then we saw what is the maximum signal frequency that can be admitted into your op-amp. Okay, so now we are ready to start analyzing some actual circuits using op-amps. So let's take some relatively easy ones. And we will first take what is called the inverting amplifier. Remember, your CE amplifier with the transistor that we studied some time ago, that is also an inverting amplifier. It inverts the sign of the signal. So let's see what an inverting amplifier looks like with an op-amp. So here is your op-amp. I'm going to ground the inverting terminal, and I'm going to send my signal to the non-inverting terminal through a resistance R1. So let's call this V in. And here is my output. And this is RF. Now, pay attention to how an op-amp circuit is to be analyzed. It is basically the same way that you will analyze all op-amp circuits. So if you understand how to do it with a couple of examples, then it will be easy for you to see how to do it in future. First of all, at the non-inverting terminal, the voltage is 0 because it's at ground. Now if you remember from the properties of an op-amp, there is a virtual short between the inverting and the non-inverting terminals. So whatever potential is there over here, the same potential is there over here. These 2 points are at the same voltage approximately. So if V plus is 0, then the V minus is also 0. Okay, so far so good. Now let's try and find what is the current flowing through this resistance R1. This current is going to be V in minus V minus divided by R1. V minus, as we have seen, is 0, so this is just V in divided by R1. Now we invoke one of the other properties of the op-amp that we used, which is that there is no current entering the op-amp. What that means is that this current I, which is flowing through R1, will not go into the op-amp. Instead, the entire current will flow this way. Right? Let me write it a little bigger maybe, if that helps. So all the current has gone through the resistance RF. So now, for this part of the circuit, now I can write I is V minus V out over RF, but V minus is 0, so this is just minus V out over RF. And now if I equate these two currents, because it's the same current, I get V in upon R1 is minus V out upon RF. And from this, I can say that the voltage gain, which is V out divided by V in, is just minus RF over R1. So this is the voltage gain of an inverting amplifier. I want to specify a few things over here. Firstly, the negative sign. Negative sign implies that the phase of the output is going to be opposite to that of the input. That's why this is called an inverting amplifier. And you can see that the input went to the negative terminal or the inverting terminal of the op-amp. That's why it's an inverting amplifier. The gain is negative. Second thing that I want to point out over here is what we have over here is called a feedback loop. This part of the circuit is called a feedback loop. Basically, the output is connected to the input, and that's why this resistance over here is called RF, which is the feedback resistance. Now we are ready to understand, if we go back, why this is called the open loop voltage gain. Over there was no loop connecting your output back to any of the inputs. This was not there. That's why this is open loop. On the other hand, what we have seen over here is a closed loop. So if you have an open loop op-amp, the gain is going to be around 10 to the 5. But now that we have a feedback loop, this is the gain. So by putting a feedback loop, we can now, with the help of RF and R1, we can adjust the values of these two resistances and get whatever value of gain we want. Now I'm no longer limited to using only a gain of 10 to the power 5. Suppose I only want a gain of 50, that's all. Then okay, I can adjust the values of these two resistances, RF and R1. I will adjust them in such a way that I get a gain factor of 50. So by putting this feedback loop, my device becomes a lot more versatile. I can do a lot more things with it because of this feedback. Also notice that because the feedback is going to the inverting terminal, the minus terminal, this is called negative feedback. Later on, we will also see what happens with positive feedback, but for the time being, we are sticking to negative feedback. Because this is an inverting amplifier, if the input looks like this, the output is going to look like this. Amplified, but with opposite phase.